Thank you very much. Is this on or not on? It's on? Good. I thought I would start by just saying what got me interested in Rodney and his work. And then we will get at it from different perspectives. You know, when I first saw the pictures, there was a combination of whimsy and melancholy that really appealed to me. And since I'm a person who has done two things, I do criticism, but I also write biographies, I wanted to know two things about Rodney. One is his sensibility, why he was the way he was, and why he looked at the world the way he did. And secondly, how he did it. And so I think with this panel, we should be able to establish that because we have two models who worked with him and they can tell us how he did it. And George Kocis, who represents his work at the Staley-Wise Gallery in Soho, is well equipped to discuss what it is that makes the pictures so unusual. We thought we'd open with, so that's Rodney, right? And he, but that's not Rodney, that's Rodney in the Polaroid. So he's taking a picture, but the picture is really of Rodney. And I think I wanted to read you a couple of things that he said, because I think he said it better than I can. Rodney wrote a blog in which he was very forthcoming in sharing his intimate thoughts. And in February 2010, he wrote, "To all of you who struggle to make photographs, the life you lead is not just one of imagery. These are the symptoms, the reflections of your life. It's what's on the inside that makes you a photographer, rather than simply someone who takes pictures. This is a life struggle. The talent is to find a way to do it on your own." And another thing he said 3 years later, "Photography is a response to the world, not a reflection of it. It is an attempt to bring order out of chaos, understanding out of confusion, wisdom out of ignorance, and lastly, beauty out of despair." So this, as you'll see in the pictures, this pretty much sums up, he says it better than I could, but these are the elements of his nature in which he is trying through the imposition of beauty to create something ordered and manageable and lovely out of a difficult world. So let me tell you a little bit about his background. It interests me that like Richard Avedon and also like Diane Arbus, his father was in the fashion business and was much more successful than Richard Avedon's father. And eventually they moved into a mansion in Woodmere, Long Island. The money was eventually lost, but for a while they lived in a very grand way. And also like the others, they were kind of assimilated Jews. Gary Winogrand once joked that all the great photographers are Jewish, even Atje was Jewish. That's not true. And as you'll hear, Rodney went to study with a great photographer who is not Jewish, but many of them, for one reason or another, are. And the fact that they have often parents in the fashion business is just an oddity that I can't explain. So Rodney was, I think, a slightly troubled child. I mean, and he was always searching. He went to the University of Virginia to study literature, but then changed to religious studies. He said that in 1967, a visit to MoMA made him decide that he was going to be a photographer. He married young, about a year after that. The marriage lasted for a while, but it ended in 1989. And he went to study at Yale. He was studying in the Divinity School, but he also studied photography with Walker Evans, a non-Jewish great photographer. And I think maybe some of the precision that you see in Rodney's work, I mean, I think a lot of it came from his own character, but some of it may have also come from his work with Walker Evans, who was the most precise of photographers. So this kind of back and forth between theology or religious studies and photography, I think characterizes all of Rodney's work. He was a seeker, as he would write in his blog. And the miracle really is that he was also so successful as a commercial photographer, because he did a lot of fashion photography. He said he wasn't interested in fashion, he was interested in style. And as you'll see in many of the pictures, the clothes you barely notice. You're seeing something else, you're seeing a mood or and he worked, he started by doing very original work for the most unoriginal, for annual reports, corporate people, and yet he was able to make something out of them that showed imagination in an area where you never see imagination. He then, he married Leslie Smolin in 1990, I can't get that wrong. And the next year he started shooting for Bergdorf Goodman, and then he had a very successful career as a fashion and magazine photographer, working for W, for Vanity Fair, for New York Magazine. What else do I have to tell you? I think only that, because I want to start looking at the pictures. He was, let's see what year, in the year 2000, he was diagnosed with chronic lymphocytic leukemia, which was kept under control with chemotherapy, which he tolerated very well, for about, for almost 10 years. And then he had to the first bout lasted 9 years, and then he had 3 more regimens of chemotherapy. He died unexpectedly, not quite 69, in 2016. And I'm leaving out lots, but I want to get to the picture. So that gives you at least the skeleton view of Rodney Smith. So these are pictures, okay, that we will see, and I'll show you them, of Reed Kelly, who is sitting right here. And I just wanted, so this is a contact sheet, and you can see he's wax penciled the one on the top left, but that's not the one that we know best. Here we see another one of Reed preparing to take off, and then we see the one that is the most memorable, I would say. And I want Reed to talk a bit about the shoot and how it came about.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. So yeah, this was my first shoot with Rodney, 2007. Sorry, dates, not my friend. But it was a really extensive shoot that we did, and we shot in multiple places. So we shot at JFK, where you see here, I'm on the wing of a Virgin transatlantic plane, which was crazy. We had to get approval from Richard Branson himself for me to walk on the wings. Rodney wasn't allowed to walk on the wing, which he was really frustrated about. But we did this series, and if I'm not mistaken, the theme of this was originally Man on the Edge. And I forget what they ended up settling on, but that was kind of what we were revolving around. So we shot at JFK with the plane, we shot at a beach, we also shot at Rockefeller Center, high up in a building. And that's one of the things, it was here's Rodney Smith and go. So this is me leaning off like the 45th floor of the Rockefeller building. And I really, really love this image, not because it's just me, but because it's very quintessential Rodney. There's so many things that over the years I came to understand were part of Rodney's aesthetic and also influenced the way I worked with Rodney. And when we were working on this, Rodney was really great at, Rodney and his team and stylist, they would basically create a sandbox that had all the toys in it. And Rodney would come in and basically be kind of like the ringmaster, and he would definitely have an idea, but also he would be like, Reed, do something. And we built trust over the years, which I was always very humbled and honored by. But I remember specifically on this shoot, I don't think we have that photo here, but it was a fashion shoot. It was for New York Magazine. And there was, the whole theme is man on the edge. And so I'm leaning over edges and I'm leaning by edges and stuff. And finally I walked up to Rodney and I said, Rodney, I feel like we're missing like the shot. And he's like, what do you mean? And Harriet Mays Powell is over there and she's art directing kind of all of the fashion. And I was like, where's the shot of like the guy like clinging on to the edge? Like, is he gonna let go? And he's like, how would we do that? And I was like, well, I can like hang over that ledge over there and you can take some quick pictures and then we can pull me back up. And he's like, Reed, I think that's a terrible idea. Go. And so I think that really built the rapport that we had, is that Rodney and I always kind of worked together where he was like, oh, Reed, I don't think this is a good idea. Get the ladder, go, go, go. And it was hilarious because Harriet Mays Powell was like, oh, this is horrible. And she's clutching her pearls and she's screaming and she's like, oh my God. And then she goes, wait, fix his tie, fix his tie, fix his tie. Okay, oh my God. So it was so much fun, but Rodney he had a very specific vision for what he wanted the aesthetic to be or what he wanted the environment to be. But one of the things that I got to enjoy with Rodney was kind of a bit more freedom for him to be like, I don't know, do something. And he would tell you, he's like, nope, that's not it. And I'd be like, okay, moving on. Or he's like, yes, let's stay with that. So it was really fun to work with him in this way in all of these beautiful and fantastical environments. That was one of the things that I thoroughly enjoyed about it, is like, when are you going to stand? Hopefully none of us will stand again on the wing of a plane for any reason, but to do things like this. So that's a bit about this shoot.
That's terrific. Thank you. And there's this one too.
Casual reading.
No retouching.
And there's your ladder.
Yeah, that was our cover of Time magazine, the ladder shot.
And
You should
here's
tell
your
this.
skating at Lake Placid, right?
Skating at Lake Placid in the biggest ice storm in 100 years. And this was also from...
Oh, well, I can go back.
Yeah, this was, we went to Lake Placid and all of the power went out. And so it was so cold and we were doing suits. And so we duct taped like hand warmers all over my body. And then, yeah, that's how we spent the day. And we shot on the lake, we shot on top of rooftops where I'm like skiing off rooftops and stuff. But it just looked surreal because we got up there and all of the trees were bent over where it had just been so wet and it all froze, so it looked like we were on another planet, but it was just another example of like the things we would do to get the shot.
Which brings us to this final one, yeah, which is maybe the most, I think, emblematic or...
This is Leap of Faith from the cover of the last book. Check it out. That's me. And this was one of those things, we were up on a rooftop and I didn't know initially with Rodney kind of what exactly he wanted or how much he wanted me to be a model or he wanted more dynamic things. So that's something that over the years we came to more of an understanding of. So in this moment, it was kind of like, Rodney, could you capture like movement? And he's like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, well, what if I like jumped from that building to that building? And he was like, how would you do that? Again, and I was like, I'm gonna climb up that ladder and like, give you a countdown. And so that's really kind of how that came about, is we were up on these rooftops and I'm kind of a circus monkey at heart and I'm just willing to climb on things. And so that's how that happened. And so over the years, Rodney and I developed kind of a system of like, all right, 3, 2, 1, jump. And that's prevalent through a lot of our shots together.
Okay. Excellent. So now we turn to you, Zoe.
Oh, no.
And what I love about this picture, but tell us how it was taken, is the feet. And I don't know if the feet was you
Those
or
are my
Rodney.
Much more static than.
Yeah, I know, but they're angled.
Oh, yeah. That was quite a Rodney-esque. Like we also had a vocabulary, but it was very kind of quirky, right? So we had little turns of the feet or a little bit of a thing of the mouth.
I'll show a few more too. But just so that here, this is a much more
More
conventional
demure, yeah.
texture. Yeah, this looks like I wouldn't have known it was Rodney.
Yeah.
But here we see another from that previous shoot where your feet are so exposed. And I'm just going to point this out. This is not really for you, but the light, and you'll see in other pictures. I mean, the palpability of the light is really quite incredible.
Yes.
And that was one of his signatures, really, to make light visible and material. But all these, this is Renata, his assistant, who brought all those teacups. And did he tell you anything? I mean, it's quite a beautiful room.
That was a beautiful location.
Yeah.
Burden Mansion.
Yeah.
Connected to.
Oh, the Burden Mansion.
Yeah, the Burden Mansion.
Right.
Where
Yeah.
is that?
You love it. It's on like 80th
Yeah.
off Fifth Avenue, and it's a second floor ballroom, so the light comes in over
through.
the building across the street.
Tell us about this and how he managed to get those geese to line up so much.
This was out west, didn't we? We were.
This was in Connecticut.
Oh, never mind. You have a great memory. I'm like, where?
They do blur together. Yeah.
Yes. So I remember. It's so funny because when you work with a photographer and they're proposing ideas, right? So you're gonna get on someone's shoulders and you're gonna traipse out like 50 yards into the sounds, and then you're gonna stand on this plexiglass stage. And this whole time I'm like, sure, no problem.
So that's what it is. It's a big piece of plexiglass that's out there.
Are we giving all the secrets away?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
That's good. That's what they
Yeah,
want to
no,
know.
Okay.
That's
Yeah, giving the
So-
audience a real.
show the magician's tricks.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's funny because when you have this collaborative relationship with someone and you've gained the trust, you do all this stuff
Right.
willingly. You're like, of course I'm gonna do this because you know what shot you're gonna get at the end, right?
Yeah.
You're like, it's so
You
worth
had
it.
a sense of what it would look like. When you
Without a doubt, you're gonna get this magical
You knew it would be
results.
good, although you
Yes.
couldn't necessarily visualize what it would look like.
Yes,
Okay.
but that's not
Fair
always
enough.
the case.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're like, I'm not gonna do this. But for Rodney, it was always yes, absolutely. And so that's what we did.
Okay,
And
this princess in the pea under the mattress
Yes.
picture is
With the monkey slippers. Stop.
Yeah.
Were those your monkey slippers?
I think
perhaps?
so.
I think they might have
Yeah, I
been.
didn't remember that, but when you said that, it did feel familiar.
I don't know why I know that, but I feel those might be yours.
So
And I'm
this
like so
is
stoked.
Rodney's daughter whose slippers they were.
Yeah, that was a really special day, and that was another one of those. I think it was like a sleep story for the New York Times Magazine. So many beautiful shots in maybe one day, right? Like, how many shots came out of that day, and all stunning.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you remember, that's not where he started the shoot. It was in a different corner. He had planned to shoot in a corner of the courtyard, and he didn't like the light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, he looked over, and the light was coming to the street.
The light
It
looks
was
like it's
Keystone
coming from a
Top.
shower.
It's like,
The
move all the
mirrors
mirrors.
go.
Yes.
Go.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, so we probably moved all those mattresses, got the ladder, I climbed on up, and, yeah. But the light was a real driver,
Yeah.
and I think that was the first time also I had so much smoke machines.
The fog machine.
Yeah, the fog
Oh, yeah.
machines,
Yeah.
because that really was helping capture the
The
light,
light.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's such an important part of his aesthetic. And you'd be out there and he'd be like, Trish, more smoke, go, more smoke, go, we're losing light. But it was really so much part of his aesthetic. And when I look at pictures like this and just all the years, I'm now a super fan of Rodney and I have been since day one. But I feel like his work kind of evokes that feeling like right after a surprised but delighted gasp where you're like, and it like lives in that ethereal space. And light play was such a huge part of that. But what also helped that was whether we were in a garden or a wooded area, you always had somebody in the back with a smoke machine to make it, give it that almost dreamlike Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, stunning.
Yeah.
Mhm. And this is, I think, the last of yours, Zoe.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever ask Rodney why he hired you in the first? Like, what was it that he?
I wasn't gonna ask because I
You know
feel
what I mean?
like
Because you were cast from pictures, right? Just
I met Rodney in person. I think. Yeah.
I was cast through a friend who was like, who recommended me, and I showed up to that very first day, and I have to tell the story because it's quintessential Rodney, is I showed up to the trailer, we're at some beach, and they put me in like, you know, thousands of dollars of fabulous like Gucci clothes and Gucci shoes and like ties and all this stuff and got me dressed, and I walked down to the beach, and Rodney's like, okay, you can head out, and I was like, oh shoot. And I thought he meant like go back and change. He didn't like what I was wearing. And so I turned to walk, he's like, Reed, where are you going? And he said, no, go head out into the water. And I was like, in this? What do you mean? And he's like, just keep going, I'll tell you when to stop. And I'm like, so I'm like, I put my feet in, he's like, Reed, just go. And I was like, okay. And so that was like just being thrown into the deep end, kind of literally with Rodney. But I don't know why I booked that initial job, but years later, I always wondered, I was like, what is it? Like, I was always so honored when Rodney would call back and say, we want you for this thing or whatever. And now I have goosebumps. It's very visceral. It's just, it's such an honor to have been a part of these things. But I think, as we've discussed this at length, is we all kind of develop a specific relationship with him, and he knows what he's going to get or can trust. And so I don't know why initially I booked it, but I think the relationship is what really solidified that.
And so you just look at this final picture of you, because this one is really a much more conventional fashion shop. You can actually see the clothes, which is unusual. But you know, I mean,
but it's a story on sleep.
Yeah, it's part of the Sleep series, and yet it's.
And also unusual for Rodney because he shot it in the garage.
In the garage.
Right.
With a backdrop.
What is the backdrop? Yeah.
And then
clouds.
you see the light that's just hanging in
Just
the
the
garage
lamp.
in front of
The lamp
it
itself.
Right.
at the top. That's the unreal.
Yeah.
element.
I just love
Yeah,
that. I
it's
love
nice.
that shot. It's
So now, George, this is your territory. So these are a couple of installation shots. Let's see how many we have. No, just two. Before we go, and we'll also talk about the book too. But I don't know if there's anything to say in particular about what this book does, and what I want to look at and talk about is it juxtaposes images really cleverly, I think, and almost profoundly in some cases, so that you don't even need a text to, but you'll see in a minute. But this is just so that it's a kind of segue, so that you know that we're now looking at Rodney's work the way it is looked at now, which is as art, really, rather than commercial work, and that's an interesting jump. So in the book, and George, you please jump in. I'm not using this, but I guess I'm pretty. So one of the things that he said, actually, I didn't read this, was that the location was the first thing he chose, because he hated studio work, right? So he had to find the right location. And he said, it's the location that drives all the pictures. Though my pictures seem so composed, they are extremely spontaneous. 95% of the pictures I take, I didn't even know I was going to take them a few minutes before. Still, the location was very carefully scouted out. Props were brought to the set. And as you'll see, we don't have an unlimited amount of time, but we'll go through the book a bit, because I think it shows, and again, George, jump in, quite effectively his way of working and his sensibility. So those trees on Cumberland Island in Georgia form this very intricate pattern. The pattern that's formed in Rockefeller Center, where Reed is about to jump off the building, is very different, but they're both overall patterns. In the same way that his fascination with circles and with spheres. That's a very early picture that he did on the left. It's a much later picture of Zoe on the right, but in both cases he's dealing with circles. I mean, was he advertising the glasses you're wearing, or is that, I couldn't tell
It might
what.
be the swimsuit.
You think it was a swimsuit, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was for LA Magazine.
Yeah.
It was
Oh.
a fashion story.
Mhm.
Yeah, it must have been a
Must have been the
swimsuit.
suit, which you can barely see. Okay, this too, these are great. So here he finds a location, and in both cases, there's an angle, right? I mean, it's very obvious on the right. What really makes the picture on the right for me is that, you know, he finds this house that is about to collapse, or so it seems. He has the big model, the foreground model, leaning towards it. But if you look in the background, you can see that there is still a rectilinear upright opening, like a doorway, but it's a derelict house. And there the model is standing absolutely erect and at a 90-degree angle to the, so it's really lovely. You know, Rodney in the, I guess, late 80s became more and more, you might say, surrealist. And one, I mean, surrealism really took off in France, and the allée is, you know, a very French construction, and it goes to a vanishing point. So there are a lot of allées in Rodney's work, but there's also the sense in many of them that the vegetation is overtaking the model, and that the model is becoming part of the landscape. And this is a picture that George, you did this, right? This is an installation of yours.
That was in London at the Somerset House for a fair where Leslie and I went and we did a whole solo presentation of Rodney's work.
Mm-hmm.
In a kind of old building, and it just works so beautifully with not just a white box
Right.
gallery cube kind of setting. So, and that was a picture that you know, Bethlehem and I just have always loved, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because it, you know, it has that surrealist element. Also, obviously references the famous
And
Godel-esque, you know, and we just, you know, we just thought it was so beautiful and poetic. And
yeah. This also is your
that was the same
yeah,
installation.
same installation. But here again, what I was saying before, in terms of the model being engulfed by the vegetation, the man on the right, that plant, I think, is Guinera, which is a gigantic form of rhubarb. And they can be as big as a person. and they're so great. But I think the formal beauty in Rodney's work really comes out in these juxtapositions, because you can see that he was fascinated by this really beautiful staircase in Charleston, but that descends into an oval void. And the same way, there is a round void in this megaphone picture on the right. And in both cases, you have a model with an eye looking. Yeah, I mean, when I referred before to the kind of whimsicality and melancholy, I think these perfectly embody that, because the man on the left seems to be a Magritte-like figure who's very lonely. But in a way, the one on the right is even sadder and more, because it's two people who clearly have this pretense, or they're not able to communicate as people. They have masks, and these sort of funny masks. But I think, yeah, the more you look at these pictures, the better sense you get of Rodney. I think I have a quote here about his walking through doors, but yeah, let's wait for that later. But these doors are, again, part of his aesthetic, and the idea that you can carry your own door with you, and it's something that you can walk through to get to the other side, and yet it's also funny, right? I mean, that's again one of the things about him that I think is so great, is that there's a combination of profundity and humor. Wait, I'm going in the wrong direction. These are just beautiful because of the light and also because of the perspective. I'm just checking on time so that we have time for you. Again, look at the horizontal striations on the left and the right. I mean, he found them in stairs and he found them in a clapboard house. And then, you know, once he found a location, and you know, you can talk about that, he figured out what to do with it. And the precision also amazes me. So the man on the right, against that doorway, if you were closer, and then you can see that this size, the white, it's almost as though his back is outlined in a perfectly white straight line. He's positioned precisely where Rodney wants him to be. And that, you know, that combination of vision and precision, I think, is what makes the work so unusual. And this is a great, I mean, I don't know, maybe someone else wants to talk about them, but they're both, the light on the right especially is, it looks like some kind of marble. I mean, the reflection in the water and the light and the trees, yeah, it's a remarkable. I mean, they both are actually. And those are twins on the left who are in a kind of Alice in Wonderland scene, but he clearly found the tree first at Stephen's Landing, and it's this incredible beech tree, and then he decided that, you know, what to do with that tree. And again, I mean, these are, by using a slow shutter speed on the right, he could get somebody descending who seems like a ghost in the same way that you have this very beautifully. Do you know anything about his printing techniques? Because the printing on the left is very masterly.
Well, I think, I hope I'm getting, he did print a lot of black and white images, I believe himself, right? Or in the beginning.
In the beginning.
And they were small. In fact, I think the first time I met Rodney, he showed smaller prints. And they were very beautiful, but to be frank, I think at the time we didn't quite get it, you know? And it wasn't until later on, particularly, he's become so well known for very large works now, and they're very effective at that larger size, you know? And this book has less of that kind of work, you know? This book it's interesting because if you get this book, I hope everyone buys another Rodney book. Because this is a very specific curation of his work. It's very elegant, a little bit sparse, and very formal, and a little mysterious. And at the gallery, what we noticed, what a lot of collectors really respond to is whimsy, and a lot more of the color, which is, you know.
There's some color.
Yeah, there's not as much, and not that I mean, this is a wonderful book, but that other aspect of his work that isn't so much highlighted here is something that appeals a lot. So yeah.
We'll move along. So this picture on the right is the cover of the other book. There's a show at the Getty Museum, and it's amazing accomplishment. He brought a barge out onto the Hudson in order to be able to capture there were three different. It was for New York Magazine, and this was meant to be on skylines. So they're fashion models. They're dressed in clothing, but notice that the head of the central figure is precisely between. His hat is right between the Gap and the World Trade Towers. I think Rodney said that it was a skyline, and now after they came down, it was a timeline. So this is the show that the book is a catalog for. It's in a town, which I wrote down because I'd never heard of it before, Raviga, I believe it is. One sec. Yeah, it's at the Palazzo Roverella in Rovigo, and that's in the Veneto, sort of midway between Ferrara and Padova. So if you happen to be there, it's on till February 1st. And this gives you a sense, I mean, I haven't seen the show, but this gives you a sense of the installation. Looks quite nice. Yeah, and there's Reed, big. Very big. And yeah, it's a,
It's so interesting the way they've taken the work. That's all flat, correct?
Yeah.
And
It's
they've
all
made it
painted.
3D. It's really, that's really cool.
It underscores the surrealism in the work, and it's interesting, a lot of creative people seem to riff off of his work and feel inspired by it to keep creating around it.
I think that's one of the things that's so appealing personally to me as somebody who enjoys Rodney's work is it's so timeless in a way. It really kind of spans, it could be from any time because there is an ethereal element to it, there's whimsy, there's fashion, but is it current fashion? Is it vintage? And so I feel like that's why it could look great in a gallery or in your living room. It's one of those things that and each piece speaks to you in a different way. And every time, at different points in my life, I go back and I look at Rodney's work and I'm like, oh, this hits differently this time because I've been through different things. And so I think that's one of the things about Rodney's work is that it really, I don't know, it can speak to you in so many different levels.
yeah, and George, I was going to ask you about that because you've certainly heard from people who are interested in acquiring the work. What is it that draws them to it in your experience?
Well, I think going off of what Reed said, there's a lot of elements in Rodney's work that are identifiable and recognizable in a kind of, you know, the bowler hats, Magritte, and there's a lot of bowler hats, there's a lot of umbrellas, there's a lot of people looking off into the distance. So there's certain like signatures of his that I think are very interesting that people can identify. But as Reed said, they also look, nobody's pictures look like Rodney's. They have elements that everyone kind of can recognize and maybe have a connection to, but the overall effect is a little uncanny and totally timeless, as Reed was saying, you know. So they're very appealing in that way. And I think also they sort of, I think Anne Morin in the book said a great quote where his pictures are a little bit, everyone is either going to fall or rise up. And, which is interesting because you notice a lot of them are people perched on the edge of, you know, a building or on a ladder, and there's that little tension where I think that leaves them open-ended and interesting to a person interested in living with it as art, you know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I wrote down because there's a famous quote by E.M. Forster about meeting Cavafy for the first time, and he wrote that he was a Greek gentleman in a straw hat, but this is the line, standing absolutely motionless at a slight angle to the universe. And that seems like a perfect Rodney Smith summary. I wanted to end before taking questions. We're going to take questions, and then there'll be Leslie Smolin, who is Rodney's wife and also directs the archive of his work. We'll sign the books if you would like. But I wanted to read one last thing of Rodney's. Look very carefully at my pictures. They are more than they seem. They are obscure and full of metaphor, yet they are showing you and me a way out of the unhappiness we feel inside ourselves, in our culture, politics, and our lives. They can show you what lies on the other side, open a door from the void, from all the fears that fill our culture, and help us find the right question to all our answers. Anyway, and on that, I guess we open the floor, and I'm not quite sure who is, am I managing the, I can. I mean, okay, I'll point to you and I can hand you a mic, I guess. Yeah, or you can come up here or whatever it is. Yeah. Okay, thanks. So, does anyone have anything to ask anyone of us. Yes, please.
I would like to know how many frames you took for Leap of Faith. I mean, it's so perfect. Is that a motor drive sequence, or is it just, is he that good where he just went click?
It's really interesting because Rodney and I developed a relationship where it was really like, okay, I know when I'm going to hit the position that I want to make in the air, and so I would give him a countdown, and it was usually like 3, 2, 1, jump. And like I could hear the click, and that's what's interesting about working with Rodney versus working with photographers today. Like, no shade on digital, but it's like, you don't know. Like, with a digital camera, you look back, you're like, that ain't it. But it was like, with Rodney, it was kind of like we developed this thing, and so it would either be like, I would jump and hear the click, but I knew it wasn't where it should be. And he's like, I don't know, did we get it? I was like, that's not it, Rodney. And then we'd do it again, and he's like, that's the one, and it was that one.
Wow.
So that shot we only did a couple times, and it was just like, you hear the click at exactly the right time, and you're like, yeah, that's it. And that's a big part of working with Rodney, was like, you trust that he's going to find the moment, and then once he had it, it was like his countenance kind of changed, and he got like a glimmer in his eye, and he was like, all right, good, moving on. So sometimes it was a lot of shots, but not often.
We were talking about that picture before we started, Reed and I, and he's being humble, but I also said, you know, no one, if I did that, I would not look like that. Because he, you know, he obviously recognized that Reed could make his legs go in that beautiful, you know, so it's really amazing that, yeah, it happened.
Amazing.
And no motor drives.
No.
Never, no. And
That's right,
you
it was
know,
filmed,
I'm
so
sorry,
you only,
No-
you didn't
no
even know
motor
what you
drive.
got. Yeah.
You know, 12 frames, 2 1/4, 12 frames to the roll, and then you gotta change rolls.
It's
Any, yeah, question in the back?
Hi, thanks. I'm not that familiar with his work, but it looks amazing. What kind of format of style photography did he employ? Was it like medium format, 35mm slide film?
At never 35, really, right?
Yeah, he started 35
Oh, but-
millimeter.
Right, but I think
earlier.
it's
So
mostly
what's the
Hasselblad,
book is
right?
medium,
The
yeah.
2 1/4
Yeah.
Hasselblad, yeah, medium format, yeah.
A lot of square pictures, actually, for a commercial, you know, a lot of commercial photographers, I think pages, kind of, you know, vertical or spreads, but there's a lot of squares in Rodney's pictures, so.
And another reason for that is because he did all the cropping in camera.
Yeah.
He didn't edit after.
I noticed a lot of the images have a very kind of cinematic quality, and the process of the location scouting and the kind of manipulation of the fog and the light also kind of echo how you might approach filmmaking. And I was curious if Rodney at any point actually experimented with the moving picture.
Not as far as I know, but he was very influenced by film, and so we didn't show any of them. But there are pictures that allude specifically to Hitchcock movies. There's a North by Northwest sequence of fleeing a crop duster plane. He shot that.
Isn't the one of the building falling a reference to a specific Buster Keaton film where somebody goes through a falling building? Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of that in I mean, we didn't really talk about, there are many specific allusions. There are some to paintings. He did one of the Vermeer girl with pearl earring. There are none, even more though, of movies. And clearly he was a movie buff.
Did he ever, Leslie, did he express interest in doing a film ever?
He shot some television commercials for Walgreens that were fabulous. They were probably the most successful, and it was, they based the concept off his work, and it was called A Town Called Perfect, where everything is perfect and it all works, except at the end it says we don't live in perfect, and for everything else there's Walgreens, which was a big deal. But he literally brought his same sensibility to life. And they wanted him to do more, but he wanted to own film. He wasn't the person behind the camera, because there were all roles, the cinematographer, right? So He didn't wanna do.
Oh, he
much.
wanted to do the whole thing. You mean he didn't want to
He
relinquish
wanted to
control?
own the film. I mean, he's about the artifact. He was all about this final image, the decisive moment, as in Cartier-Bresson, this is the frame, and the rendering of that in the most beautiful way, on beautiful paper, mounted and framed. So film was not the same tactile, tangible artifact for him.
Yes.
Do you know what photographic works or exhibitions were at his 1967 visit to MoMA that made him want to be a photographer, and also what artists he most admired or were inspired by?
Was it Ansel Adams? I can't remember actually.
was-
Maybe I never knew.
In the book I gave you, the other one,
says?
it talks about.
Yeah, I
that
happened
trip.
to just read. More than that, what's interesting, at least I think the book,
It was Margaret Burke White.
Rodney tells a story of that day. He was with his father in New York, and they were by themselves, and they got in a very big fight. And my understanding is Rodney's father was a very dominating figure, and they had a tricky relationship. And I think his father really laid into him, and Rodney stood up to him kind of, but apologized later. And the same day he went to the museum and he said, I want to be a photographer. And I think, I don't want to speak for him, but I will, a lot about it was saying, I want to control my world. There's some photographers that reflect the world that we live in, and others say what they want it to be. And Rodney's certainly in the second camp, So I think a lot of his pictures are very much a response to things he could have been different,
Yeah, but it's a good question. Because Dwayne Michaels had a show at MoMA around that time, and
Yes.
who knows? But we'd have to look it up.
Sounded like it was a number of different photographers.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it wasn't Family of Man because it was the wrong.
No, but no, that's really true.
I have a question for Zoe.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get the ducks to line
That's what I
up?
asked. I think they're geese, but
In that photograph of you standing in the water,
yeah, that's what I want to know too.
there's all this, I wasn't on the shoots, I was at
We
work.
were there all day.
Yeah.
right?
You don't get the ducks.
Yeah.
Waterfowl.
All
it's
these
performed for
pictures,
you.
there's animals show up and they line up perfectly, and I always
Yeah.
wondered, how did you get those ducks behind you? You did that.
That was just a gift from the gods. We were there all day, and that was just a
That's-
moment in time, right? And we were ready.
But were the ducks, was that their home? Like they just happened, he said,
They might have come back another time, but
but I mean, like he didn't know there would be
No.
ducks.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did
There
he
were
know
some
that they were gonna be
swimming,
there?
there were some flying, they would land, they would,
Yeah.
it was just.
Happened
I don't know.
But that's the moment, that's what's so genius about Rodney, is that he will take something like
Yeah.
that has entered the environment and work it into
Yes.
the work to make it make a statement.
yeah.
So he just could see things, and
Yeah.
in that fraction of a second, you have the geese that are swimming by in a straight line, and Zoe out there on plexiglass, and magic happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
They're geese. They're good.
We interviewed Sabine, who is the stylist on this, and she said that I guess there was a plexiglass table,
Yeah.
but they hadn't actually put air holes in it, so it kept floating, and the tide kept going out at the same time, so there were a lot of moving parts.
And that was the same, I gather, with the barge for the World Trade Center, because that barge also was
Was
moving.
moving, like,
Yeah. I think also I was wearing flippers. I'm not sure if you can see.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so flippers that are rubber and plexi that's
Oh.
not. I was moving, the barge was moving. That was a fun day.
Yet your body language is perfect.
Yeah, anything for the shot, right? But that was, and then there was a few more of that series where I think I was in the wheelchair, like I can't remember what else happened that day, but that is really stunning.
And what we see is what we're lucky to see in these things is just the tip of the iceberg. There is so much in the archives that sometimes if you follow Rodney Smith's Instagram, you'll see new photos come out or new pictures come out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot that happened. Or like, it's just, there's so much, he captures so many good moments. So
Yeah.
I'm personally looking forward to seeing just more things as they continue to be released, because it's not just the things that we're seeing in these books, there's so much more.
And what's in this book is a lot of pictures people have not seen
Yeah.
before. The curator came out to the archive, she went into the contact sheets and she found things he marked, but not things that people recognize. So it is interesting. And one of the essays is really about the cinematic quality to that question that someone asked, really, that there is a lot of parallels. I don't know if they're intentional, but certainly the correlation between cinema and his work, the narrative quality, is something that's very evident.
If there are any more questions, there's time for one more question, but if not,
Please, yeah.
so, no, well, good. Well, thank you all for coming.